takeoff, turn left heading 120 visual, climb to 5000, runway 17 clear for takeoff.
It's a busy time for Australia's airline industry. Flights are almost at pre-pandemic levels. Delays are up too.
There was an announcement over the speaker from the pilot as we were queuing up for the plane saying there was a delay.
I have been stuck on a tarmac before where they're saying, we're just waiting for a gate.
Contact Correspondent 3280.
While airlines are feeling the brunt of passenger dissatisfaction, they're not entirely to blame.
It had surprised many passengers to learn that perhaps their reason for the delay or the cancellation is actually because of air traffic control not being able to staff those control towers.
Do we have enough staff to provide the services 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, whether there are 0 aircraft flying or 1,000 aircraft flying? No, we don't.
Correspondent 33, taxi Charlie 2.
Government-owned Air Services Australia is responsible for air traffic control and airport fire services. Last financial year, the organisation was behind almost 1/5 of ground delays at the nation's 4 biggest airports, including a staggering 3/4 at Brisbane Airport last month.
We unfortunately had a bad month in December and we're taking further actions to continue to reduce it.
Staffing was so tight last month that across 7 East Coast sectors, dozens of flights were affected, with the most 96 due to fly through airspace around Byron Bay. It's unclear how many of those flights were delayed or cancelled.
When we have, whether it's an illness or an unable to place or a shortage for some particular reason of the controllers for that piece of airspace, we can't readily just grab somebody who's sitting next door and operate that piece of airspace because they don't have that particular qualification and certification for that piece of airspace.
Tom McRobert is a long-serving air traffic controller and union president. He says staff are feeling the strain.
Me, like many others, did overtime shifts on Christmas or Christmas Eve. You're going into work thinking, are we going to have enough staff and are we going to be able to get everyone to their destination safely?
Melbourne seems to be really quiet.
Air Services Australia CEO Jason Harfield insists airspace never goes completely unmonitored when there's a shortage, but the organisation has to manage the workload on remaining staff.
We will always maintain safety being paramount. So we will sacrifice efficiency in order to always protect safety.
For pilots, that may mean responsibility falls on them to communicate with each other in the sky. On busy routes, some airlines will choose not to fly because of the risk.
We've got increasing concerns with the operational performance of Air Services Australia. If they put a restriction on the airspace, then simply aircraft won't take off and land. That's a poor outcome for everyone.
Virgin and Qantas both declined an interview, but Qantas has raised its concerns with the federal government about the increasing frequency of uncontrolled airspace. The airline says between October 2022 and September last year, there were 236 events where air traffic control services weren't available, which affected almost 1,400 Qantas Group flights.
The delays last year, mainly resulting as a result of staffing impacts, did occur, and there's no dispute on that, but it is unacceptable.
Imagine a career that brings a whole new world of exciting possibilities.
Air Services Australia is recruiting more staff to bolster its current ranks of more than 900.
We are the career for the future.
But with fewer than 3% of applicants passing the entrance exam and a rigorous training process, it's not a quick fix.
Just some of the key features, some of the waypoints there, some of the airports.
I think it took about a year for me to even get accepted. So once training begins, it's about 2 months of theory, then about a month or so learning the console itself, so how to operate it. And then until then, maybe 9 months or so, it's just all about being able to separate the traffic.
In 2020, a report into the culture of Air Services Australia found more than 50% of its staff reported bullying and harassment.
The culture's definitely difficult. The best way I would explain, I suppose, how most of us feel at the minute is a little bit unappreciated.
Bullying and harassment is something that we're always monitoring, and we will continue to monitor, and we will continue to review it again to make sure what we're already doing is still working. If not, what else do we need to do?
Tom McRobert is pleased more controllers are on the way, but believes the staff shortage was largely of Air Services' own making. During the pandemic, 140 controllers aged between 56 and 65 were incentivised to retire.
Many of them were in excess of 30 years' experience. Many of them were in areas that it's very hard to pass on that experience quickly. 1/10 or 1 in 10 of our air traffic controllers were at retirement age. And so 10% of our workforce were going to retire in the next year or so.
Transport Minister Catherine King is the minister responsible for Air Services Australia. She declined 730's request for interview, but in a statement said the coalition government introduced the retirement scheme and that Air Services has been dealing with staff shortages ever since, which her government was actively working to address. The head of Air Services Australia says he's confident his organisation will get back on track, but can't give a time frame on when delays will end.
Charlie 2, enter Bravo behind a northbound.
There's no magic date when it will no longer occur. Every week and every day we are trying to reduce it and minimise it. We should see every month improvements going forward.